All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this early in the morning. I'm Mick Locker, and I lead Deloitte Consulting's Technology, Media, and Telecommunications Industry Group, and I'm delighted to be hosting this panel today on the modern era of 5G. 5G, of course, has been a topic for a number of years, and I think we have turned a corner recently. I'm joined today by a number of wonderful panelists who have a lot of experience in this space. And before we get into the conversation, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And as you do that, if you could just say a little bit about your experience with 5G. Aruna, let's start with you.
You said we had 2 minutes, right?
2 minutes.
So, my name is Aruna Anand. First of all, good morning to all of you. It is a pleasure being here with you all this morning. So, I'm Aruna Anand, and I'm the President and CEO of Continental Automotive. I also am responsible for a business area called Architecture and Networking for North America that manages a whole host of portfolio for North American OEMs. So for those of you that are not so much familiar with what Continental does, in a nutshell, we make pioneering products and services for safe, sustainable, and connected mobility for people and their goods. Because this is more on 5G and more on the connectivity side, I also want to say something that I'm really proud of. Continental is the first company to launch modern telematics in cars in 1996 with 2 OEMs. Just a little interesting stuff. Outside of telematics, we also develop high-performance computers and purpose-fitted controllers for safety, for motion, for comfort, for convenience features in the vehicle. We are 150 years old. Yes, you heard that right. And we are 190,000 people strong. And we operate out of 58 countries in the world. So all of that, I think, is interesting facts. But at the end, in a nutshell, how I want to end this is very simply, what is our approach to all of this? Our approach is how can we enable cars to perform better? There are a lot of things one need to take care of in automotive, right? Even data speeds, data rates, plans, whether it's cellular or satellite, all of that. But everything aside, how do you get from point A to point B in a safer and a better manner than has been done before? And we feel we are better positioned to answer these questions because of a breadth of portfolio as well as the systems that we've launched in the market. That's it, Durga.
All right. Morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone here. My name is Durga Maladi. I'm a Senior Vice President and General Manager for our cellular modems and infrastructure business at Qualcomm. I do 2 things at Qualcomm. One is run the 5G modem RF roadmap for all of our business units. So that includes automotive, mobile, which is split between smartphones, compute, XR, wearables, and other kinds of devices that are associated with mobile. And IoT, which kind of transcends all kinds of different devices in industrial segment, in consumer segment, and what we call as edge IoT. So that's my one job. The other job is running the business on all of our modems, modem RF solutions, and infrastructure businesses across the company. Now, it's really nice I was kind of thinking about the actual title of today's talk, so I'm going to actually step back in time to 2019. Been involved in 5G for a very, very long time. Started off in 3G, then went off to 4G, then 5G. So I can say a word or two in terms of how I see the G transitions and where we are at this point in time. This is year 4 of 5G. Back in 2019, a lot of the applications of 5G were really focused on what we knew best, starting off with smartphones. And while there was a lot of emphasis on what is the killer app, what is it going to really do in a smartphone that it hasn't done before, we always felt that there were different ways of looking at it. And it's not always clear that the killer app must be in the same device that you already know before. Starting from 2019 to where we are today, we've seen a gradual diversification of the kinds of devices and industries that have adopted 5G. I hope to talk a little bit more about it as we move forwards. But suffice it to say that 4 years from that point in time, we've seen the proliferation of devices in industrial segment, in compute segment. There's a lot of tablets and laptops that you can get today with 5G. We take unlimited data plans for granted, not something that we were used to back in the early days of 4G. So something has changed in terms of the network economics, something to be said about the killer app sometimes showing up on the network side, not just on the device side. And as we look ahead, in automotive segment, the automotive industry is itself going through a tremendous amount of transformation. And 5G has a role to play in that. It's a role, but it's on the connectivity layer, but it is something that we feel is quite important. So I hope to talk a little bit more as we move forwards, but this should set the stage.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Derek Peterson. I'm the CTO for Boingo Wireless. A little bit about me. I've been focused on connectivity for almost 3 decades now, trying to figure out how we get connectivity to more and digital transformation happening. And so about 11 years ago, I got a chance to join Boingo as the CTO and really push the envelope in trying to figure out how to get connectivity for all these different venues that we were supporting, venues like here. A lot of people know us for airport Wi-Fi. That was just trying to figure out how you get connectivity in an airport back in 2000 when Wi-Fi was called 802.11b, right? So things have changed quite a lot since there. So now we're deploying at Boingo towers, small cells. We've been doing DAS since the 90s and Wi-Fi since the 90s. And it's really just about trying to figure out how to be able to get that connectivity that has been kind of controlled by big players forever, the mobile phone, and try to figure out how you take that same kind of innovation of connectivity and wireless connectivity and bring it to everyone. And that's what we're seeing now. I sit on the board of OnGo Alliance, I sit on the board of the WBA, I sit on the FCC chairman, really trying to push the idea that we need more spectrum and more 5G capabilities for everybody. And so for when I think about 5G, and I know we're going to get into it, it's a change where instead of it just saying, hey, we've got handsets that a mobile carrier provides that has this different technology in it, it's now 5G for everybody, and we're talking about applications, and we're talking about services, and we're talking about this digital transformation we're making. And we got to look ahead to 6G in my mind, and I sat on this stage probably 2 years ago and I talked about 6G. And you got to look forward to 6G and what does that connectivity mean for us as we start now thinking in 5G about applications and use cases. In 6G, it's about converged applications and converged use cases. And so that's really where I think we're headed with 5G is opening it up, and we're going to be talking about a little bit more on private networks when I get my chance. So with that, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. All right. Well, as you can see from the introductions, our panel has a lot of experience in this space, so I think we're going to have a good conversation. So let's get to it. So Durga, I'd like to start and direct my first question to you. So we've seen a lot of adoption in focused areas with 5G via upgrades to mobile devices and plans, as well as with emerging 5G fixed wireless access. Thinking about the potential transformational nature of what was described early on as a potential network of networks, where do you see the technology most likely to transform the landscape for consumers and businesses?
Yeah, so when we think of continuing from where I left off in the introduction section, I think it's important to kind of split the impact of 5G into the consumer segment and the industrial segment. These are two very different segments. In one place, it's kind of sometimes thought of as a IT technology. In other places, it's more of an operational technology. So there's different levels of transformations that occur. So if you think of the consumer space, in the consumer space, we have smartphones, wearables, XR, laptops, any other routers and so on, which we take for granted. You just have something at home and then it works with that. Those are places where the problems are a little better understood when we know smartphones and compute. But there's a few things that are happening. One is in the compute segment, for instance. 10 years back, we would have all of our data pretty much on the laptop itself. And then if you don't have your laptop with you, you don't have your data. It seems almost strange to even think of those days. Nobody even thinks of that anymore. Most of the data, if not all of it, is really in the cloud. What you really need is a high-speed wireless tether to fetch it wherever you want, regardless of which device you're using. You can go back and forth from a smartphone to a computer. So that's certainly changing. It's changing the form factor of what we call a laptop. They're not as bulky as they used to be, much thinner. So embedded 5G connectivity, in addition to Wi-Fi, which is also complementing it all the time, Wi-Fi is where it is, and it's in a pretty good spot from that sense, is changing the compute industry, and that's something that we're beginning to see. Now, when we get into AR glasses and so on, and this is something more of how we see AR, quite honestly, I don't think we are really interested in those gigantic, goofy glasses that you put on top of it. I wouldn't wear it myself. What I'd be more interested in is glasses that are literally like sunglasses, just something that you and I wear, but still have all the processing and the connectivity capabilities that allow it to do basic rendering and basic processing. I think it's a very important segment as we move forwards. It has all sorts of potential implications. That's certainly a place where things will be transformative. It's never been done before, but it is something that we're all working on together with our partners. Moving a bit towards the IoT segment. In the IoT segment, we have industrial IoT, tremendous amount of work that's going on over there. In fact, most of the interest is coming in from the COOs as opposed to the CTOs, because 5G is seen as an operational technology that can effectively improve the productivity of the enterprise. And from a productivity of enterprise, if you go to a manufacturing plant, for instance, there's tremendous amount of data that you can harness and process, but you need to fetch that from wherever it is located. And 5G actually allows you to do that in a reliable, secure, and in a timely fashion. So a lot of these applications tend to be latency sensitive as well. So in the industrial segment, the manufacturing sector is one place where we are beginning to see 5G interest at a very high level. Lots of POCs that are occurring, commercial networks coming up at some point in time, but it's going to transform the industry in that sense. And finally, one word on fixed wireless access. Fixed wireless access seems like almost a throwback in time, where we've always had some level of connectivity at home. But the truth is, about 80% of the world doesn't really have true broadband connectivity to the home. Even in the US, if you just take a look at the difference between rural versus urban connectivity, there's a huge difference. A lot of the issues are sometimes associated with, can you actually have fiber going all the way to the right point in time? What 5G, and especially 5G with millimeter wave, has done is brought down the economics to the level where you can have true broadband connectivity nationwide, not just in rural areas, not just in urban and suburban areas, but in rural areas. And that unleashes a different kinds of, it changes the landscape of where things are. Distance education, which we took for granted during the pandemic, is now a nationwide thing. You can have quality education. So different industries can start coming up in that segment as well. So true broadband connectivity using 5G, millimeter wave, and fixed wireless access, that's another important application. One final note, automotive. Now, in automotive, connectivity for telematics has been there for a while now. But as we move from that point in time, and as there's a lot of emphasis on automotive, and you'll hear from Aruna a little bit more on what else is happening in that space, but from a connectivity standpoint, what we're looking at in 5G is how do vehicles communicate not just with the network, but with each other, with other infrastructure around them, traffic lights, stop signs, and whatnot, and real-time information that is getting fed back, complementing all the other sensors, the radar, LiDARs, and all the other cameras that are there, and providing a true ubiquitous ADAS-based solution in place. So this is one of the things that I would actually talk about later.
So Aruna, anything to add on that automotive front?
Yeah, a little bit. So I too want to go back in time. Let's start with 1996, when we introduced modern telematics in cars for the first time. And if you look at the use cases then, it was remote assistance, diagnostics, and roadside assistance. And many of these connections were point-to-point or on demand, right? And we all in some flavor are used to that or remember that. The question that is being asked here is, we have all these evolutions of technology from 4G to 5G and potentially to 6G. What changes with this technology? And what does that mean for transportation? That is where I want to focus. 2 points. I would like to divide this topic into 2 sections. The first one, 5G and its performance. Second, broadband and multi-broadcast, and how do we do the evolutions that has happened from point to point to broadcast. So on the performance side, we notice that 4G, then talk about 5G, the latencies have tremendously reduced, right? And probably it'll be the same with 6G. Now the question is, with latencies being reduced, going back to what you said, can I do more? Again, going back to my first point, what can we do with this technology to drive safer? And if I'm able to then, with reduced latency, get the data from the external world, and as well fuse with the information, augment that information with the sensors that are present in the vehicle, like radars and LiDARs and so on, now we are speaking. Why? Because we give more information about the surroundings of a vehicle to the car to enable them to make better decisions. And if they make better decisions, we all become safer. So that latency, reduced latency, helps in that effort. Now let's go from that to the second point, which for me is very exciting and very important. Instead of a point-to-point system, if we are now able to send that data, make use of that latency, and send it to multiple cars of their surroundings at the same time, imagine that. Every vehicle, not every vehicle, but the related vehicles get the information they want, what they want, when they want. Isn't that exciting? And why is that exciting? Because now we enable all these cars to have better information, to make better decisions, and make us safer. And you do all this with reduced spectrum usage, which is also becoming very important, because the spectrum we have to take care. That is transformative, especially considering 600,000 lives that are lost by vulnerable road users every year globally. Look at that context and what this can do. And that is transformative for me.
Truly transformational. All right, so Derek, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. So 5G now covers most of the population with low and mid-band public networks. Private cellular networks, in contrast, are still in a bit more experimental mode with enterprises and government agencies. What do you see are the key impediments to more widespread deployments of private 5G networks, and how can we, as a broader industry, help to overcome those challenges?
Well, I think one of the things that was said is that you have to ask the question, what can I do? What can I do more? One of the things I caught that she said is, can I do more? What more can I do? And I think enterprises and private networks are saying, we can do more. In the past, if you look at, Wi-Fi, and we'll use it as an example, it started off and it was, okay, it's the thing over there, let it do its thing. And look at all the innovation that happened with Wi-Fi. We're seeing the same thing with 5G, because we've opened it up with, making it available to more people across the globe, right? In Europe, it's unused, let's use it a different way. We're trying to figure out how to share better. All these things are important to be able to open it up so that people can say, I want to innovate on that. I've got an idea that I want to be able to do something more. And when we think about technology and think about all the changes we've gone through, think about cloud. We introduced cloud, and I remember in 2016, I was going, cloud is just the data center and it's not yours. We've done that forever. But then we ended up saying, what the cloud's giving us is giving us the opportunity to go borderless. And that was really the value of cloud, is we went borderless with our technology. We can put it on the edge, we can put it in the cloud, we can put it in our own data center, we can put it in the car, we can put it in the cameras, we can put all this technology, all this storage in all these different places, and it's opened it up for us. And we built tools and capabilities around it, technology-wise, so that we can end up pushing code all to these places all at once. And that's what we're trying to do with network now, right? And you think about what's going on with network, we're saying, hey, we shouldn't just lock it down to, okay, you got to deploy this kind of an antenna from this kind of vendor or this kind of solution. It's like, how can I do that? So Open RAN comes in and all of these solutions. That's going to help us to be able to really just push the envelope so that that innovative spirit that we have, which we've seen with all of these different technologies, really starts pushing. Because innovation is, you make it. It doesn't just happen. You have to make it, and you have to ask those questions. And it is evolutionary. I think about, some examples. We started off with a trial private network at the Padres, and you can read about it and watch a video about it. It's pretty interesting. But we started off there, and we talked to them, and they said, what can I do with this? And we were like, well, you're a great example because you're right next to the border in San Diego with all the Navy ships, and they're saying we can't share this spectrum because the Navy ships are there, and you're never going to be able to use it. And we said, well, let's go try it at the Padres. And if you've ever been there, it's right there. The ships are right across. And we're like, we want to try it here. Can we try it here? We partnered with the Padres, and that's what it takes. And we said, let us put some stuff in here. You know what? Your suites have a bad opportunity for people to connect sometimes, and you want your suites to be great, so let's put in some nodes and put in some tablets and put in some capabilities so people can have great connectivity in the suites. And they went, wow, this really works. And we said, yes, it does. We've expanded that. We now have got this place called Gallagher Park, which had no connectivity, and they've gone from making a couple $100,000 of selling little wristbands to people to come in and have beer before the game, where they're selling T-shirts and hats and beer and whatever, and they're making, millions of dollars where they were making none, because they said, what else can we do with that technology? And that's what we need to keep doing, is we have to say, what else? We keep evolving new use cases, we keep creating new use cases, and the key to all of that, in my mind, isn't to focus in on 5G in the technical sense of, okay, all the different standards, but really, what is 5G trying to do? Because that's what we did with cloud, and then we ended up saying, well, now we've got an on-premise cloud. We have to redefine cloud. We need to redefine 5G, in my opinion. We keep saying it's the cellular technology, but in reality, it's the use cases, and it involves bridging all that technology together. Making Wi-Fi, work with the cellular, making it with and you guys asked me about the NFC in my hand, right? That opens up doors, it opens up cars. It should interface with the kind of technology that she's got in the car.
Derek has a chip in his hand, by the way.
7 years ago, I did it, and it was to push that envelope of how do you integrate your personal experience with my home experience and my office experience, so I don't have to carry a key. And it was like, can I do it? Yeah, I can. Let's go do it then. Let's go try it, and it works. But that's sometimes what we have to do, is we have to go, what is that thing that we're trying to do? And as I wrote in a manifesto back in 2014, we need to start thinking about collaboration and convergence. It shouldn't be retail and industry. It should be, and consumer, it should be, how do the three work together? And then how do we bridge that gap so we're not sitting there, you're looking at use cases in a vacuum, but we're looking at them as a whole. We're looking at technology, and we're looking at networks. 5G networks as the whole network, because guess what? That 5G network still has fiber. It still has possibly a backhaul to get back there. It still has probably, hopefully, some edge compute and some edge storage. So all of that's making up 5G. It's not just the network. So let's talk about how you build all of it and work together and build some great use cases and some great opportunities.
Awesome, I love that. Durga, anything you would add on helping push the adoption?
Yeah, so maybe this is one way of looking at it. So as Qualcomm, we're in the midst of so many POCs and in private networks. Just an observation on this. A few years back, the first time we sat down with other industries which had never really adopted anything wireless before, I mean, not just cellular, but wireless before, I think we went in with a sense of humility in terms of trying to understand exactly what is, I mean, it's very easy for me to say, here's 5G. It has ultra reliability, low latency, high data rates, and so on. These are probably phrases that make no sense actually to them. Actually, so we spent some time trying to understand what are the problems that they have. And one thing that became clear is everyone is interested in improving the productivity of whatever the enterprise is. So we kind of split it into carpeted enterprises where there's a lot of understanding of the problem. In fact, some of the terminology is the same. But when you go to the manufacturing sector, mining sector, and some of these other places, it becomes clear that it starts from, hey, I have a sense of ownership of this. So that's why it's a private network. It starts from there. It's not just about the fact that this is my enterprise, but there's a little bit more than that. I own the data, so I want the data to be secure. I don't want this to go out anywhere. And yeah, the reliability and latency is needed because I'm trying to remove all the wiring around. It's a little harder, like in a manufacturing plant, to move machines from one place to the other as you kind of go back and forth. There's a downtime and an uptime associated with that. It's much easier to do it wirelessly. Can you do that for us? This is where we started off with. Really glad to see that we've changed that conversation gradually into, instead of us selling 5G to you, we want you to adopt 5G at your own pace so you really embrace it. That way you are the champions of it. So we've seen that dialogue shift from R&D labs to CTO organizations to COO, and now finally the CFO showing up saying, okay, now tell me how much do I have to pay for this, and so on. So this is a good set of steps that we've taken in this space, and I hope to see some of the earliest commercial networks coming up with private networks coming up in the near future. But I think it's important to understand that the problems over there are not really associated with what we think of typically in the broadband space.
Yeah. All right, so Derek mentioned use cases. Aruna, what is Continental Automotive? How do you approach the identification and development of products and services and new use cases for your customers?
Okay. It's an interesting conundrum with respect to cellular capabilities and its use cases. And maybe we can start out with a couple of examples. If you're able to stream 1 gigabit per second, the question is, would you stream it? And say that it costs $5 for every gigabyte. So every 8 seconds, you're using $5. So over the course of an hour, which is the average time a car is driven in a given day, you would have consumed 450 gigabytes. And let's all assume that in the future, we have a very great plan which offers you unlimited data for $100 per month, okay? Now the question is, do we still want to do it? Because this is just a network cost. I'm talking about cars in particular. And then you have on top application cost and the backend server cost. Just because something is available, it is not possible that we just do it because you need business cases and it needs to be realistic. So that's one side. I'm not being down on this, but I'm just wanting to give different scenarios, okay? So that's the first one. The second, let's talk about use cases now. Imagine streaming. I think we all stream stuff. A compressed video, 4K video, is around 15 megabits per second, and a high definition version of it is probably 5 megabits per second. And imagine that you're streaming through 4 or 5 cameras in your car. And what I can tell you is this is in the range of 4G already. So what do we want to do then with 5G, right? There's lots to do, by the way. Now the question becomes, should I now take all the radar, the sensor data, all of that, and going back to what you said, should I be processing it in the cloud and coming back? No. No in this case. And the reason being that we have high-performance compute in the car, in the vehicle, very close to the sensors, and they are doing the compute functions. And we don't want to increase the data rate by sending everything over, right? So that part of it is taken care of, and we don't quite need 5G for that. But going back to my previous statement, there are still critical data after the computation is done about the environment of the vehicle that can be sent out. This is called sensor sharing, which is already standardized with Society of Automotive Engineers. The likely, now 5G, yes, we need it. We need all the capabilities, and you likely need it for teleoperated driving. And you do this today, actually, with under reduced speed, using special techniques, using commercialized 4G network. But with 5G, what it does is you go to much higher speeds, safer. So to summarize everything, it is not just capability and use cases. I guess you understood my conundrum a little bit. But it is more about how do we take these things, fuse them, marry them, augment them, together the data that is coming through with the sensor information in the vehicle, so we are able to provide a better environment scenario to the car so it can do better decisions in order then we be safer. So that's the use case response.
So I'd like to add, I think you made a very good point there. There's lots of use cases. Part of the challenge is finding that use case that becomes a business case. And that's really the trick, right? I was pulling into the parking lot, and I'm thinking about cars because I got stuck in traffic for 2 hours getting here. And then I'm pulling in the parking lot, and they've got somebody out there, waiting for you to give them $10 in the parking lot right behind here. And I'm like going, but I'm already allowed in. We got our innovation center over here, so I should be able to just drive in. But I can't because they're stopping every car, trying to collect $10, give them a refund back. The car has an ID. We have these capability already on the streets where, I go rent a car, I pull out a little thing, and it keeps track of all my tolls. Why can't all of our parking lots be toll-driven? Make it so that you have your car has an ID on it or whatever. It ends up charging me, and I end up being able to just pull in a parking lot instead of having to pay an attendant to do that kind of stuff. That's the kind of use case and business case that makes a lot of sense. But it requires this collaboration between the car to be able to have some kind of wallet, like what we did with the toll things, or something to that effect that I can go into any parking lot, hopefully anywhere in the United States, and get connected. And those are the kind of things that we're working on with one of our customers. Is they said, you know what, coming into and out of games, we work with a lot of stadiums, is a nightmare for them, right? 100,000 people try to come into a game, and they all got to go park. And it just takes forever, and so you try to do these things where you have these tailgate parties and all this different stuff that you're trying to do to try to balance it instead of just solving some of the problem that you have. Make it so the cars can get in more seamlessly. A wireless connectivity parking lot capability along with a wireless connected car, we've got a solution. It's there. So we just got to finish creating that business case and push it through. And those are the kind of cool things that we can do when we collaborate and we work together and we build these great 5G networks.
Awesome. All right, so we have about 6 minutes left of our session today. I'm going to ask each of the panelists 2 more questions. So I'd just like to ask for some lightning round answers. So my first question, we can start with you, Derek, is what is your organization doing now to help develop the 5G ecosystem of players? You talked about how important ecosystems are in pushing this. What is Boingo doing in that regard?
So 2 things. We're participating in the standards to make sure that the evolution that's happening with networks is available for everybody. So that's one thing that we're trying to make sure happens. And the second thing is we're working with venues and people who have these ideas to try to figure out how's the best way to solve their cases. And that's what we do. I kind of consider us nowadays, we used to be this Wi-Fi connecting company, but now really we're just a consulting company helping people get better connectivity.
Durga, how about you?
On 5G, we always have started off with very early R&D, running through the entire standardization process, pre-commercial trials, prototypes and test beds, eventually commercial deployments. So when you kind of take a look at the complete pipeline, I think the way that we see ourselves is that we are enabling a larger number of industries that have never adopted wireless technology before. And in that sense, we are playing an important role on not just on the device segment. We feel that it's also important to bring that innovation into the networks as well. So we are playing a lot of products, and a lot of the recent announcements that we've made have spanned the infrastructure segment as well, especially with the virtualization of RAN, with software being written on third-party hardware and our products that enable that, and usage of open interfaces using ORAN infrastructure. So that's one of the things that we are doing. In addition to that, really looking at the new kinds of devices that have their own unique set of challenges beyond just 5G in terms of power consumption and the overall form factor that actually is needed in those devices. So these would be 5G connected wearables, 5G connected AR glasses, and different kinds of modules that go into all kinds of industrial modules, which are really, they need to be at the right price point, but at the same time, they have their own unique power and connectivity based requirements. And the final thing is that we've started off this journey by talking in terms of the connected intelligent edge. I know it seems like just as a phrase by itself, but the meaning over there is important. We do believe that intelligence needs to be distributed across the network, not just in one centralized location. So 5G at the end of the day is a means towards an end goal in terms of fetching data back and forth. But we need to have intelligence at different locations, from devices at the edge to some of the networks at the edge itself, and of course deep in the cloud.
And Aruna, how about you? What's Continental doing in terms of ecosystems?
Okay, a lot, but in the interest of time, I'll really make it a lightning round as you requested. So we work with standards body, pre-standard body, solution providers, network providers, all of that. We all need to be talking the same language, right? And it requires a lot of effort and alignment so that all this thing, and then how do you efficiently use the spectrum that's allocated to you and things like that. On top of that comes, we are also working with government agencies because some of these things, we need to put awareness to the people to help understand what this technology can do for us in terms of life savings. We are talking 600,000, for example, vulnerable road users. And if that awareness is there, maybe it helps things go faster. So those are the things we are doing. And more than happy to talk with you later.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so final question. In 30 seconds, approximately, looking 10 years into the future, Aruna, can you give us one bold prediction for the future of 5G?
Okay, little joke, and I'll be very fast. In 10 years from now, I think we probably will be talking 6G.
Or 7, maybe?
6G, because 6G is expected to come around 2028 or so, and the vehicles will start seeing them hopefully by 2031. But to answer to your question, so two things, again, that this convergence of technology, seamless integration of these technologies, satellite, cellular, all of that together is what I see. And the second is integration, what you can call as connected active safety, integration of data from the car, from the radars, LiDARs with ADAS and automated driving, and fuse it with safety-related information coming over the air and get better decision for cars to make our roads safer.
That sounds great. Durga, 30 seconds or less, bold prediction.
Okay, 30 seconds. From my perspective, now this is now just a prediction, which is 10 years from now, so maybe it's going to be wrong, maybe it's going to be right, I don't know that, but one trend line is very clear. There are two important trends that are occurring right now. One is the way in which communications is progressing ahead with 5G, and yeah, a few years from now, we'll just look back in time and say it's going to be 6G. And the other one is AI is becoming very pervasive into multiple areas. I did talk about intelligence in the end. The blend of communications and AI-based processing, it's going to be increasingly important. And we will expect that, not just take it as, oh, wow, this is something new, but that will be the standard expectation 10 years from now.
Awesome. Derek, 10 seconds or less.
No, I'll be quick. I'll be quick. I agree. I'm hoping we're not going to be talking about 5G and 6G. I hope that AI ends up, to his point, ends up allowing us to say these converged networks that just work, and we don't sit there and go, okay, I'm on satellite, I'm on this, I'm that, I'm that. It just is like it all works because their systems can do it. We're getting towards there with slicing. That's the evolutionary piece. The innovative piece is when that slicing and all that stuff turns into be smart, and we have connectivity everywhere, and
Awesome.
it talks everywhere.
Well, maybe we'll be back in 10 years to let you know if any of that happened. I would like to close by thanking this panel and also thanking you all for joining us. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.